Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israel here for Renaissance Periodization. We're going to talk about getting motivated to train. In the last video on this subject, we talk about getting motivated for dieting. It's going to be a lot of the same for training. This is going to be a shorter video. If you want to see the super in-depth version of all this stuff, take a look at the dieting video we did before this. We're definitely going to have all the stuff outlined, but really the diet stuff is where we go super, super deep. Now let's take those concepts and apply them to training. Here's the thing. We say getting motivated to train and sort of staying motivated to train. Well, we don't actually mean motivation, we mean adherence. Adherence is the idea that you come in over and over and over again and stick to an actual plan, which gives you all the results. Now, whether that comes through motivation or various other mechanisms or concepts, we'll talk about that in a bit. Motivation actually means something more specific. So when most people say motivation, they really just mean adherence, right? And adherence is your success of sticking to a plan. And we say, okay, well, what kind of plan? Well, it doesn't much matter. It turns out any plan of training that gets you going hard and heavy consistently will produce results. And any plan that goes a little bit better than that, nails overload, nails specificity, nails fatigue management, work really, really well. So if you train hard, specifically to what you need, and every now and again you take breaks to let the fatigue come down, you're well on your way to excellent results. And adherence is to that basic plan is by far the most important thing. And the details of a plan are not nearly as important. So because most training success doesn't come down to the details, and because it comes down to adherence, a lot of people get into the weeds. Damn near this whole channel is getting into the weeds of what really makes training optimal. And that's so totally super cool if you have the adherence locked down. But maybe you, and maybe some of your friends that you're helping, and maybe a lot of your clients, the adherence is the trouble. You have all the knowledge in the world. You've watched a bunch of RP videos. You've read a bunch of books. You've trained yourself for a while. You really, really know how to train people well, really well. But sometimes you feel like all of your knowledge, and a lot of it is just lost on people because they can't even show up 3 days a week in a row to train. And what kind of periodization are you going to do for that? Like if people miss half of their training days, gee, you're really just hobbling along at that point. However, the science of psychology, sports psychology specifically, sport and exercise psychology, has some really good tidbits for us as to how to increase adherence. And we do that by understanding the 6 constructs of adherence. And these constructs occur in phases. Some of them occur earlier in the process of beginning training. Some of them occur later. Some of them sort of run throughout the process. And if we understand these constructs, we can really, really greatly benefit because we can do the right stuff for ourselves and really for our clients at every single step of the way to make sure they milk every construct for what it is and maximize their chances at high adherence. And here are the construct: inspiration, motivation, intention, discipline, habit, and passion. Let's take a look at each one. Let's define them, and let's talk about how to increase them as much as possible so that our clients or friends or even enemies that we're helping get more jacked, get in better shape, sticks to their training, which is number 1 for results. First construct, inspiration. Inspiration is the spark that gets you or your client to want to start training, right? It's good for getting you to start because like all the stuff people talk about, it's all about building habits. Like if you haven't started something, habit is irrelevant. You can't build a habit out of something you haven't ever started. So the inspiration is in some sense maybe the most important of these. It's really not in the grand scheme, but it's critical. It's essential. Right? The most essential thing about a hospital is that it's a building and there's rooms. Does that mean the kind of building really matters? No. Does it mean the size of the rooms really matters? No. How good your hospital is depends way more on the kind of doctors and technology you have than the fact that you have a building. But a building, without it, is a non-starter. You can't have a hospital in an open field. Okay? You need at least some tents or something. You have no enclosures, there's no hospital. Just the same way, inspiration you have to have, at least to some extent, to get people to start. Now, once inspiration hits, it's not good for much of anything because it just doesn't last very long. Inspiration might be with you for minutes, it could be with you for hours. At the most, it could be with you for a day or two. After that, it sags away, and then you're left to your own devices. In other words, you have other constructs to use to keep you adherent. So inspiration boosts your adherence to that minimum level to where you actually start doing things. So it's critical. It's essential, but it doesn't last very long. So its upside is that it's required. Its downside is that as soon as you're inspired and you get into a training plan, you get into training, you're going to have to do something more than just be inspired to keep yourself going. Now, because inspiration is important, we got to figure out how we can boost it. And really, it's really important to figure out how to boost it, because if you can't boost someone's inspiration, their level of inspiration might be just under the threshold of where they need to actually show up to the gym. So we need all of our tricks to boost inspiration to get people to go to the gym, because that's a lot of times a huge battle, is people won't even enter the gym. They won't even decide, okay, I'm going to start training. How do we boost this? Well, one good way is being around inspirational people. Like if you're around people that train and you're around people that are super positive and upbeat, you're like, man, training seems like a great thing, and it seems like something I can do. And as a personal trainer, if you're recruiting clients or something, you being inspirational yourself, being someone that's a good person, that's in great shape, and that trains is a really good start. People are like, man, this training thing, it seems like a really good thing. But if you're not inspirational, if you say, no, man, training is really hard and you're gonna bleed to death in the squat rack, then people get scared and maybe the opposite of inspired. Next, and this is something for a person to really experience personally, but other people can sort of help it along, is kind of a negative view, but nonetheless important, of seeing what kind of not great shape you're really in. And some people decide to start training, similar to dieting, when the elevator at work breaks and they have to go up 4 or 5 flights of stairs to get to the office. And they've been taking their fitness for granted. Look, like if your fitness is never tested, if you wake up, you walk to your toaster, you walk to the shower, you walk another 50 feet to your car, you get in your car, you sit in your car, you walk 50 feet in the parking lot, you get on an elevator, you sit at your desk, you revert that process on the way back, you sit on the couch and watch TV, you go to sleep and repeat. You would have to be in morbidly terrible shape for that to be challenging. So you could be in very, very bad shape, not morbidly terrible, and feel 100% fine during that entire time. And then the elevator breaks and you have to go up 4 flights of stairs. And at the end, you have to take a break. Your lower back starts to cramp. You're breathing super heavy. You're sweating through your suit. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I am unbelievably out of shape. I don't know where the time went. Like when I was 20, I was in shape. I was on the rowing team at university. And now I'm 35 and holy crap, I put on some pounds, but oh my God, that might be an inspiring moment in the negative way, but nonetheless pushes you to be like, I need to join a gym. I need to do something. I got to start training. And maybe you also clean up your diet, but definitely training comes up on the table. Additionally, and lastly, and there's many, many other examples, these are just a few, is seeing success stories. A lot of folks, you'll follow people on Instagram. You'll see someone from your office or a friend, and they'll start training, right? And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 months later, they're posting pictures of themselves jacked and lean and doing all this crazy stuff, jumping on boxes and doing muscle snatches. And you're like, what? This person was in terrible shape. And they did it. And maybe I can do it too. So stuff like that, really, really, really good for inspiration. But remember, inspiration doesn't last. Graphically, if you take a look at the screen there, we've got adherence on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. Inspiration is that little bulge there that goes up for a real short time and then comes back down. We got to catch it at the top and use another construct of adherence to make sure our adherence sticks around. The next construct is motivation. Motivation is not just a catch-all term for everything related to adherence, it's a specific thing. Motivation in the context of training is an inner desire to train, to want to train. When you say you're motivated to train, it means you desire training. I want to go to the gym. It's not like, oh, I have to. It's not a burden. It's not even an inspiration of the gym would be fun. It's like a need. It pulls you to the gym, okay? And it is good for fueling your adherence day to day after inspiration has waned. Inspiration will wane after a few days, probably after a day. Motivation can kick in to keep you going, okay? What it is not good for is being reliable everyday support system, because it waxes and wanes. It goes up and down. Sometimes it's really high and you just can't wait. You rip the doors off the gym. And sometimes it's so low that you wake up in the morning and you're supposed to go train and you're like, I'm not going anywhere. I've had enough of training. This is stupid. So motivation sets up a pretty decent baseline, but sometimes its waxes and wanes fall below what we actually need to show up to the gym. So it's critical to have, but we're going to need something more to make sure we're not inconsistent. Motivation is good enough to get you to go regularly to the gym, but you're going to miss some sessions if you just rely on motivation. However, it's critical to have. So how can we boost motivation? Well, very, very important is a clear set of objective goals with training. What do you want out of training? If you're training for fat loss, I don't want to lose 15 pounds. If you're in the gym training to get stronger, you need objective rep strength goals, right? First couple of days, you're in the gym on inspiration alone. You try some weights, you figure stuff out. And you say, okay, I want a realistic goal. I want to bench press 135 pounds 5 times. And I'm going to give myself a few months to do it. Okay, now that you have that written in, every time you come to the gym and you're doing 95 for 5, and then you're doing 105 for 5, and then a couple weeks later, 115 for 5, that motivation builds because I'm getting closer to my goal. I'm succeeding. If you don't have a goal, it's very hard to figure out what it is that pulls you into the gym. There's nothing pulling you in because there's really no point for you to be there. It's like setting up a journey, Columbus, or let's say Columbus sailed to the Americas. He was motivated to get somewhere. If he just loaded up a ship full of supplies and sailors and was like, let's just go out in the ocean and find some shit, it's very unclear how they would have stayed motivated. But when you have a very clear objective goal, it's very, very easy to stay motivated. Another tip is being around positive people. People that believe that you can do things. People that keep you grounded and realistic. Not people that are negative all the time. Like if you're around negative people in the gym especially, that's not really, really good. Sometimes you can be around negative people in your life. Like you may be living with your parents and they might not like it that you lift weights. Or maybe you're living with a boyfriend or girlfriend and they might not like it that you're lifting weights and go, oh, you're going to the gym again? Like, why don't you hang out with me? Like, that's not great. If you're around positive, motivating people, they support you, it's much easier to stay motivated. Another one, very related to the first point, hitting steady PRs and letting them sink in. So you hit a PR, 115 for 5 in the bench. And like, it's a PR because you've never lifted that much before. There's sort of two extremes of the spectrum as far as a reaction from you after you do that. One extreme, which is a really bad idea, is being like, yeah, I ain't shit, low. Like, everyone's stronger than me, whatever. Right? Like, that's an unpleasant experience. If every week in the gym that you show up and you're not as strong as you want to be and it's unpleasant, when you look back at 3 months of training, it's going to be 3 months of not pleasant. How the hell are you supposed to stay motivated? Someone's like, hey, do you like training? You're like, no, I hate it because I'm a nobody. Okay, you could take second place at the Mr. Olympia eventually and still feel like a nobody. Then you've had 25 years of bodybuilding where people literally look up to you and millions of people follow you on Instagram, but you were only ever second place, so you could be like, I ain't shit. But you'll never make it that far, don't worry, because if you think so poorly of yourself and never let yourself feel the PRs and feel the pride, you won't last. So on the other end of the spectrum, which is the much closer end to be, is not quite like, the very tail end of the spectrum is like psychotic and being proud for hitting a PR, like, oh my God, I'm the strongest man in the world. That's a little crazy. But so we're in the middle towards that right-hand side is probably where you want to be of like, man, like I did 115 for 5. I'm getting there, man. This is great. Like I'm the strongest I've ever been. Feel it, let it sink in. And then when you sort of hazily imagine the gym, the next day, maybe you're tired, you're going to subconsciously be like, man, the gym, it's a good place. That's a place where I've been getting stronger. That's a place where I have fun. That's a place where I achieve things, where I go beyond. Gee, that's automatic motivation. So let yourself experience, hit those PRs, try hard, and let them sink in. Be proud of them. Not like crazy, like, kid walking for the first time, parents kind of proud, but like feel it and let it fuel you for more. A big part of that process, though, doing it right, is making sure you're not setting unrealistic goals, failing repeatedly, and then blaming yourself. Look, it does not matter how good your genetics are. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It doesn't matter what kind of potential you have. You can always set goals that you can't reach, right? I'm sure Superman, there's some weight Superman can't lift. And he'd be like, well, I want to move the planet Jupiter. But he can't. He's like, oh man, I'm weak. I suck. I quit being Superman. That doesn't make any sense. So you want to set realistic goals that are challenging so you can be proud of them. You don't want to come into the gym and bench the bar and be like, easy baby, PR. Like you're not really going to feel good about that. You want to challenge yourself. But you want to make sure your goals, you don't want to be like, okay, I benched 115 for 5 this last week. You don't want to be like, all right, 155 for 5 next week. You try it, you get it for a double. It falls on you. You're like, man, I suck. Oh my God, you could have, why not pick 185 at that point? Pick 315. Just kill yourself at the bar because you're nobody anyway, right? That's nonsense. Pick realistic goals and slow progressive goals. You did 115 this last week, do 120 this next week. You get tired, take a break, then come back and do 115 again, and then do 120 and then 125, right? Slow and steady progression, realistic goals. Don't choose goals that are crazy. There's a huge thing with goal setting where people seem to think that they need to set psychotic goals in order to prove something to themselves. And they end up setting goals that they can't achieve and they prove that they suck. It's a nasty self-fulfilling prophecy. Choose moderate, relatively easy, but slightly challenging goals first. You can always choose a little bit more challenging goals. But to be honest, if you choose the relatively easy goals that are a little bit of a challenge and you adhere to the plan, you keep doing that, eventually you're going to milk out all of your genetic potential. 10 years later, you'll be a fucking god because you'll have hit these small goals over and over and over. And the entire process, you'll be super proud of yourself and super motivated because you'll have been successful the entire time. Or you can set crazy goals that you'll never achieve and be disappointed at every single rung of the ladder and then never even get up the ladder because you quit. Because a lot of people, they just have disappointments and they quit. And people do the thing where they take like third place at a bodybuilding show, but they look the best they ever have. Their next goal could be like, all right, I want to look better, maybe take second. But some people are like, it's got to be first place, and I've got to put on 20 pounds of muscle. They put on 15 pounds of muscle, they take second place to some kind of total stud that comes out of nowhere, is on his way to Mr. Olympia, and they're like, oh my God, I suck. Like, no, you're the best you've ever been, and you moved up one placing. And then if they just stuck with it, maybe the next show they could have won first place and all the roses and awards and everything's great. But they quit because they were like, nah, this is like, I didn't do what I wanted to do. Make sure your goals are realistic. And if you don't hit your goals, bounce back. But you should be hitting most of them, especially early when this process starts, just by setting them realistically and not super crazy. Lastly, a good thing for motivation is overcoming temptations to slack off and then really being proud of that. Like, you didn't want to go to the gym Friday. Everyone's like, hey, let's go out to the club. And you're like, look, I got to go get my workout and then I'll meet you guys there later. Of course, you want to go home and just veg out and then take like a 1 hour post-work shower and then go to the club with your friends, for sure. But instead, you go to the gym, you grind it a little bit. After the gym, you have a choice of how to feel. You can be like, I did what it takes. I'm just a regular human, like commitment, cool. Or you could be taking your shower after the gym before you go clubbing with your friends and feel like, man, I'm a fucking baller. I was tempted to not go to the gym. I fucking did it anyway. And I'm fucking proud of myself. And you let yourself feel that pride that fuels later motivation. It makes you believe that you can do things. Really, really important. So if we look at the graphical representation of motivation here, it keeps you up at about that level of adherence that you need. But notice that waxes and wanes. It goes up and down, up and down. So we're gonna need to establish a base level of how much work we're putting in to consider ourselves adherent. Because motivation goes up and down too much, we need to sort of plug something in right about the middle of our motivation, say this is our watermark for doing a good job. Because that's really making sure essentially that your line of adherence is at a certain point. We have to define what adherence means. For that, we need to have more than motivation. We need to have intention. Intention is the next construct, number 3. Intention is a commitment to execute a plan, okay? It's not just a goal, but a roadmap. It's not like Columbus saying, okay, the Americas are that way, let's go that way. It's knowing the tides, knowing the trade winds, knowing how you're going to snake through so that at every point of the journey, you navigate with the stars or whatever the fuck they did back then. And you're like we made great headway. We sailed 150 knots yesterday. Like, great, we're on our way. We know where we're going. This is really good stuff. Intention. So for example, if your motivation, your goal is to put 50 pounds on your 10RM squat in, the next year, that's nice. But you can sit at home and be like, 50 pounds, 10RM, my legs don't feel any bigger. The goal and having the goal doesn't do actually anything for you. What are you going to do about it? That's intention. So you could say, I'm motivated and my goal is to put 50 pounds on my 10RM squat. My intention is to train hard 4 times a week to get there. Now, once you have that, literally, that is an explanation of exactly adherence, right? The training 4 times a week is the adherence. The motivation gets you pumped to go do it. But the intention makes sure that if you're not so pumped, you still go do it because you have a plan, right? What is intention good for? It is great for setting a clear what to do and what not to do instructions, especially the what to do. You're motivated for a goal, but intention is literally how you get there. It's the roadmap, it's the plan, right? It's the, if you stick to this, then you are being adherent. And really at the end of the day, without intentions, goals are just wishes. I have a personal pet peeve. It's fucking minor. It doesn't bother me a lot. It's mostly for comedy. I have a pet peeve of people telling me their goals. Why? I'll explain. Because goals are cheap as fuck and they're fucking meaningless. Sorry for swearing so much. Not really. You could say, I want him in the Mr. Olympia. Bravo. When do we get the red carpet? How many people, we can come up to a kid in Kenya randomly And be like, sir, do you speak English? He'd be like, yes. Be like, great. Say, I want to be Mr. Olympia. He's like, I want to be Mr. Olympia. We're like, oh my God. Oh my God, congratulations. Here's your Sandow trophy. He's like, but I'm not going to do what it takes to be Mr. Olympia because I actually don't care. Oh shit. Talk is cheap. So it turns out motivation is cool, and saying you have a goal is cool, and even actually being motivated is cool, but without intentions, without saying, I want to be Mr. Olympia. I'm going to train this many times per week. I'm going to eat this many meals. Without that stuff, that's the stuff that actually builds the shit. Like imagine you're designing a skyscraper and you're like, oh, I can just see it now. It's going to be 1,000 feet tall. And someone's like, hey, where do you want the bricks? And you're like, oh yeah, fucking brick. Oh, you have to fucking build this thing, right? So goals are cool, but my pet peeve is, don't value good goals are nice. It's good to have them. Intentions. I want to see intentions. I want to see a fucking plan. Then I want to see you do that plan. That's what really gets you the results. Now, intention is great. The plan is great, but it's not good for enforcing itself. You still have to do the work to meet your intentions. And when you're motivated, it's easy. When you're not so motivated, when motivation dips on you, predictably it will. Every few days for sure. Then you have this intention like, I have to go to the gym today. I intend to do that. But I'm just not motivated to go do it. Don't worry, the next construct will fill in that blank for us. But intention's not good enough to get you on your really, really hard times. Now, we need intention. How can we boost it? The absolutely number one biggest thing is, and I would say this isn't even boosting intention, it is creating intention literally, is having a clear training plan to follow. It really doesn't matter what it is. People message me all the time and message other folks at RP and say, should I do 5-3-1? Should I do starting strength? Should I do juggernaut? Look, do something. A lot of those plans are really good. Yeah, of course, one of those is better than the others. I'd say juggernaut's probably the better one of all those three. But look, man, just have a plan. And if you're worried about the details a ton, fine, but make sure you have a plan. Any three of those plans is way better than just being like, I'm just going to go to the gym and lift weights. Okay. So how do you know if you did a good job? What is your intention? You literally have no idea. Lifting weights is the same intention as okay, I need to go to the grocery store. Okay, I'm going to go drive my car around. Okay, what is the chance you're going to get to the store? I don't know, there's probably a store on the way somewhere. That's ridiculous. You want a map to take you to go GPS from here to the store. The same way as a program is a map to go from here to there. If you don't have a map, holy crap, yeah, you can still train hard, but man, it's tough to even really know if you're doing a good job. Someone says hey, how have you been training? You're like, I think pretty hard. I think I've been training hard. And you're like, how do you know how hard is hard enough? You're like, I don't know. I see other people in the gym, they're there for an hour. I'm sort of there for an hour, sort of do some sets. You never know. And that can actually be destructive to your motivation. Because remember, a big part of motivation is executing your plan and patting yourself on the back for it. How the fuck do you pat yourself on the back for it if you don't even know if you executed the plan? Someone's like, hey, you feel a little lazy at the gym today? You kind of did a little less than you were supposed to. Folks, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, how can you even answer that question? Then you can get your demons and get the better of you, and you'll be like, yeah, I guess I was lazy. And then you have no idea what to do. But if you have a plan, it's easy. Do the plan and that's it, right? Huge. Plans beat working out, just working out by a long shot, right? Good plans have a little bit of wiggle room, but not too much, right? So auto-regulation is fine, but not too much. And auto-regulation actually enhances your intention abilities because it gives you a little bit of flexibility, but it doesn't give you so much that you can just not do a session at all and be like, oh, I'm still doing it, right? Lastly, having a coach or other person who knows about your plan and knows your plan hold you to it is a really, really big deal. So if your coach writes your plan, you know exactly what your intentions are, and you know that there's someone waiting for you to be like, hey, how was your Tuesday morning session? You're like, okay, I didn't do it, right? It's tough to tell a coach that. So coaching is really helpful. It's not required, but at the very least, a coach can give you a plan. So with intention, in this graphical representation here, it's this dotted blue line. Intention, you set that blue line. And notice the blue line is set at a certain adherence level. That could be 4 times a week, I train for an hour with the following plan. Boom, blue line. Now notice, sometimes the yellow line of motivation is over the blue line, which means it's more than enough to get you to adhere to it. You have extra motivation. Those are the days when the yellow line is at its peak, the yellow curve, way over the minimum of intention. Those are the days that you're like, oh, I want to keep training, but I have to stop. I hit all my reps today. Coach is going to kill me if I do more. That's a great day. That's easy to do. Then when the motivation curve crosses the blue line, that's you're just motivated enough to get all your stuff done. That's when you do your last rep and you're like, whoo, that was great. Someone's like, more? You're like, oh, good God, no. Even if my plan called for it, I don't think I could do more. And then here's the real big problem. Sometimes motivation is way under the intention. So you have to do whatever, 20 sets today, and you're legit motivated to do like maybe 10, maybe not at all. Maybe you're not even interested in going to the gym. What do you do then? Then we need our next construct of discipline. What is discipline? It is very simple to define. Discipline is the use of willpower to get you to meet your intentions when your motivation is not sufficiently high to do it itself. As people will say like, hey, like must take a lot of discipline to work out hard, and you're passionate. We'll get to that later. You're passionate, so your motivation is almost infinite. And you're like, I don't really feel like I need to do discipline. I actually want to go to the gym. No one tells you like, man, you must be really disciplined to watch your favorite show. And you're like, well, I want to do that anyway. Like, I'm disciplined to eat tasty food. I'm disciplined to like make out with my girlfriend or whatever. Like, I want to do that anyway. And someone's like, man, you're really committed to making out with your girlfriend. You're like, what? Doesn't make any sense. If you have things that your motivation is not always high enough to do, now that's when you need discipline. You need to use willpower to fill in the gaps between your intention and that waning motivation. Really, really, really important. Willpower, which is discipline is the execution of willpower to meet your intentions, is really needed on your low days or your low times. It's when you're finishing up your last 3 sets and you look at the squat rack and you're like, oh, fuck, I could just never come back here again and it'll be totally fine. That's when discipline kicks in and you use your willpower, you grit your teeth and you get those sets done. Now, the bad side, the downside, what discipline is not good for is sustainability. If your motivation is waxing and waning here, and your intention is here, you're always going to have to use a crap load of discipline and in order to fill in the gaps, because the gaps are enormous. The thing is, willpower runs out quick and it needs to recharge regularly. So if you don't have remotely enough motivation to meet your intentions, there's no amount of discipline in the world that can catch up, because you're just going to run out of that willpower that discipline uses. So motivation has to be close, on average, right around your intentions. Willpower through discipline is just a tool to get you the rest of the way on the bad days. And then your willpower recharges on the good days when you're using motivation. And when you have a bad day again, you can grit your teeth a little bit, right? So super, super important. I'll say this. People talk about discipline a whole lot. They say it's the key, the core. It's not. Right? The key is actually inspiration, okay? Motivation is central. That's probably the most important part, which is probably why people talk about it the most, is that average motivation is the most important part. But discipline is incredibly important because it fills in those gaps. Because we're not always 100% motivated. On our low days, we need this to have a thing. So it's very, very important. How can we boost it? Probably the biggest advice I'll give you, in maybe this entire video, is the best way to boost discipline is to know that you're going to have to use it. To know that there will be hard times ahead and not being surprised. Some people, I've heard this from tons of folks, especially folks just beginning. First couple of weeks of training, they're like, man, like, I'm really struggling with motivation. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, I don't always want to go to the gym. Motherfucker, are you serious? That's the nature of motivation, right? You're not always motivated. It literally does this. We know that, right? So if you are shocked that you're not always motivated, you're really a step behind. When you're not feeling motivated, you shouldn't be shocked. You should be like, oh, I'm not motivated. Okay, motivation waxes and wanes. This is predictable. And it will come back. I promise it'll come back up. Now that you know, oh, there's hard times, aha, I can use discipline, apply my willpower, and do what it takes. Coaches and friends can be really, really big for discipline, because a coach can be someone that knows you have to have an intention to execute. And you know you're going to have to tell the coach whether you did it or didn't do it. And at that point, it's one of those things where you're like, I got to apply some discipline, because otherwise my coach is going to be disappointed in me. Like, a plan is cool, but knowing that someone's there watching, someone's there expecting some things can really help you use your discipline. And a good coach can help coach you in how to use your discipline, can help let you know when the troughs are low from motivation, and let you know how to use willpower in the best possible way. Friends can also help. Here's another one, music, right? Music to pump you up, especially in days in which you're dragging, can boost your willpower a ton. Like, you're like, someone's like, okay, let's do this set. And you're like, grrr. But then you get your beats in your head and you're like, grrr, let's do it. You can grit your teeth extra hard. Now, again, This is why we include things like music, not in motivation, but in discipline, because willpower is what you're using. It contracts, it recedes. It's like a battery that goes low. Music can pump you up, but it pumps you up a ton the first time you listen to it. The next favorite song you have doesn't pump you up as much. And if you're really behind on motivation, it only works for so long, right? And you get used to your music, and all of a sudden your song that pumped you up the most is just like noise, and you're like, good God. So it's not something you use all the time. Now, you can train to music all the time, but you want to save your best, most pumped up songs for when you really, really need to grind and you're not feeling like you super want to. Here's a huge one. Deloading and proper fatigue management means that you're not always training so hard that you're burning out. When your training gets super, super hard and unsustainable, you take a training break, you take a deload, an easier week, and then all of a sudden your motivation will skyrocket and you don't have to use your abilities of discipline nearly as much. And that recharges your willpower a ton. So it's incredibly there's no amount of discipline in the world that can get you to come train when you're fatigued out of your mind if you never fatigue manage. So a big part of it is taking those breaks. Like people say oh man, Jim's a really hard worker. Well, that's because Jim takes his weekends and really relaxes so he can work super hard Monday through Friday. That's an essential thing, right? So deloading, really, really big deal here. And lastly, practice, right? Exerting willpower is a learned skill. Or we all know it, but it's a modifiable skill. And you exert a ton of willpower and then you recharge. Exert a ton of willpower and then you recharge. Your ability to exert lots of willpower goes up over that time. It's something you can train. You don't train it right by exerting it all the time, fatiguing, overreaching, and then just burning out. And you don't train it right by never using it. If you never use willpower, miraculously somehow your motivation's high enough, then when you get into some tough times, you'll be like, I'm not even used to having to grind. So it's good to grind a little bit, then recharge. Grind, recharge, and it should come naturally through the process of training. The big takeaway with the practice is you may have had some hard times, like 2 or 3 days in last week where you were like, dude, just going on straight willpower, like had to use your discipline. You may think like, oh my God, that was so hard. Like, there's no way I can sustain that. Well, good news, you're going to get better at that. And because your motivation is going to come up on average too, it's all sunny in the distant future. So keep going. Here's a cool little graphical representation of discipline. We see that the line of intention is, whatever, it's at a certain level of adherence. When motivation isn't high enough, discipline is those little blue filler there. Discipline is using willpower to fill in the gaps on your low motivation days to make sure that you meet intention every time. The result of this is that even when you're not feeling your best, you still execute the plan. To put it technically, your adherence is still good. So your motivation waxes and wanes. You're using discipline by applying willpower when it's too low. It's a sustainable process. The thing is, when your goals are worthy, you need to use quite a bit of discipline and quite a bit of willpower to keep your intentions sort of filled in, to keep them true. And at some point you can think like, holy crap, yeah, when my motivation's high, it's easy, but am I really going to fight this battle regularly and use this much discipline and willpower? Yeah, it's sustainable, but gee, it's not pleasant. Is it really always going to be so hard? The answer is no, because of the next construct for adherence, habit. What is habit? It's the automation of training, in this case, so that motivation waxes and wanes a lot less the longer you diet. It used to be motivation would drop down a lot, but habits mean your motivation stays relatively elevated and the drops are really, really small. And a good analogy here is brushing your teeth. Once you habituate something, it takes so little motivation to get done. Your average ability to adhere to it is super, super high. So what ends up happening is it's just much easier to do. Do you have to use willpower to brush your teeth? I mean, a tiny bit. Someone could say man, you brush your teeth every day? And you're like, yeah. God, are you motivated to brush your teeth? Look, yeah, sometimes you are. You wake up in the morning, you're, yeah, there's all this gunk. You're like, oh my God, I can't wait to brush my teeth. I'm going to feel excellent. But you don't always feel like that. You're like, I could totally go to work without brushing my teeth. Fuck those people at work. I hate them anyway. I hope my breath is terrible. But in reality, you still brush your teeth. Why? Because it's habit. And it's not like this new experience, or I gotta brush my teeth, I can use willpower. It's just every morning you wake up and you're used to brushing your teeth, no big deal. And someone's like, man, does it take a lot of willpower to do it? You're like, no, what? It takes a tiny little bit, but once I start, habit takes over and I just start to do what I usually do. I've never brushed my teeth before, so I don't know. I think people do it like this. So The same thing happens when you are doing a training program. What is habit good for? Well, it creates less of a demand for discipline and it raises adherence abilities, which is really, really awesome, right? Once training is a habit, your success rates skyrocket, and thus getting to habit is super important. And habit predictably starts to settle in after usually about 4 to 6 weeks of training. That's when a lot of people will sort of catch the wind and be like, all right, this is just something I do. Getting people to not quit before is a really, really big deal, all right? And habit allows adherence for the long term. All of a sudden, training is not this battle of good and evil where sometimes you're motivated and sometimes you're not. You're usually just like totally fine to go train and it's just something you do. So on the other hand, what is habit not good for? And this is an interesting thing because a lot of people that are habitually do something, they're actually not so good at being coaches or motivators because they just have no idea that the last time they were inspired to go do what they're doing is like a really long time ago. They've just been doing it from habit so much they can't even inspire all that well. So habit is no good for giving you that initial inspirational spark. Like, let's say you've been doing swimming training. You swim 3 times a week at the community pool every morning. And someone's like, man, like, what inspires you every morning to go swim? You're like, inspires? I wouldn't say I'm inspired. And they're like, so how do you use willpower to get it done? Like, I don't even use a lot of. It's just something I do every morning. Like it's just I put on my clothes every day. It doesn't take a whole lot of inspiration to do that. I brush my teeth and I go swimming. And I've been doing it so long that my motivation to do it is just on average pretty high. And it's not like crazy psycho motivation. It's just like, yeah, like I'm just going to get it done and it's fun and it's good. And I'm just so used to it. It comes naturally, right? Habit does not guarantee that you're going to fall in love with the training process. That's later. That's passion. That's our last construct we're going to talk about. But once you're habituated to something, it's habit, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in love with it. Some people train for years and years, decades. They have a personal trainer. They go to the gym Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. They're awesome at it. They're super healthy. They're super fit. And people are like, are you in love with training? Like, no, not really. Like, are you in love with brushing your teeth? No, probably not. Sometimes you really want to train. Sometimes you really want to brush your teeth. But on average, you're like, yeah, it's cool, right? But you get it done. And that's the most important part. So getting someone, almost always, in order to get someone passionate about something, it has to be habit first. But habit is not a guarantee of passion, all right? Nor does it give you an initial spark. However, habit is super, super important because it guarantees long-term success or highly enhances the chance. So how can we boost it? First of all, having a plan with regular and consistent training days per week. Okay, if your plan is super complicated, some weeks you do this, some weeks you do that, it gets really tough to build a habit out of that. So you want don't change your plan too much. 4 times a week, these are the days, these are the times, great. Having similar times of training each day, really, really important. So if you have a plan that's like, okay, today I have to train for an hour at the gym versus today at 5 p.m., I'm showing up. That 5 p.m. plan, way easier to get to habit because you construct your entire day around it. As soon as you get out of work, like here's where people get really, really fucked over. They get out of work and they say to them, okay, sometime tonight I have to go train. Okay, you come home. You have a meal because you're hungry. You watch a few episodes on TV and all of a sudden you're so tired, you just want to hang out with your friends and you're like, man, I'll train tomorrow. Nope. But if you have 5 p.m. after work, you just drive to the gym. It's habit for you to drive to the gym, or not yet habit, but it's your plan, 5 p.m. Your alarm goes off at work. You're like, see ya, boss, go to gym. At some point, it becomes a habit. Like every Wednesday, you leave and you go to the gym. There's no way you're going to miss a session because in order to go home instead, you would have to deviate from your habit. Like imagine, how do you miss a session of brushing your teeth? You have to wake up in the morning, walk to the bathroom, piss for like 5 minutes, look in the mirror and go, I'm not going to brush my teeth today. That breaks your normal routine. But if you brush your teeth at like a various time throughout the day, it's easy to just not get to it. But if every morning after you pee, you brush your teeth, then like, good God, it just happens, right? It's just something you do. So having a regular training time every day, you know when you're going to go train, that's great. Huge one is getting together with a training partner, personal trainer, or coach. For most of you folks, especially a training partner, it gets easy to like waif off on your training and not get into the rhythm of things. If you have a training partner, and you guys are both committed to training certain times a day, that's some shit that's happening and you're gonna show up because the training partner's there. She's already there. She's already warming up. You better not let her down because she's training with you. You're training with her. That's how it works. So you want to make sure that If you have a training partner, you guys both commit to certain times and days. The best training partners I have ever had are not the people that necessarily even train the hardest, although that's awesome. They're not the people that were equivalent or close to my strength level. I've had much stronger, I've had much weaker. Best training partners are people that show up every single time. That is the best thing about a training partner. You hold each other accountable, you both get into the habit, and then the habits reinforce each other. Holy crap, you guys are going to do great things. Not overdoing volume and frequency and burning out is a really big deal. Habits can only be habits. So that's another point. If they're sustainable, okay, if you have this, like your intentions, your plan on your plate is something you can't sustain, how the fuck are you going to do it as a habit? You can't habitually train 20 sets of quads 3 times a week. You can't habitually train 5 sets of quads 3 times a week. If you set something realistic that is sustainable, it's really easy for it to transition into habit. If it cripples you every time, you're not going to habitually be able to do it. And the really big kicker, and this is something that if you're a personal trainer or if you're a coach, you really got to communicate to your clients. Habits take time. You won't get to habit in a week. You won't get to habit in 2. And people sometimes can struggle with like, oh my God, I have to exert all this willpower. This is crazy. How's it going to happen? Be patient. But roughly 4 to 6 weeks in my experience, people start to pick up steam and things become habitual. Like you're getting little kids to brush their teeth. The first couple of days probably sucks. They don't want to do it. The next couple of weeks probably sucks because they know how to do it already, but they really don't want to. After that, you get them into the habit of it. You check on them a little while, and all of a sudden they're just doing it. You don't have to tell them ever again, and they brush their teeth hypothetically for the rest of their lives. Same thing happens for training. The good thing is know that habit is coming. Know that help is on the way. It's like that scene from Lord of the Rings where they're like fighting the fucking orc army, and they're losing, and they're like, fuck, and they look over, and Gandalf's got that white horse, and all the fucking warriors come to help him. That shit is coming. That's habit. It's coming to help you, so know that it's going to come. Now, obviously, you still have to fight all the orcs and shit like that for the 4 to 6 weeks that habits not arrive, but it will kick in, I promise, especially if you check all these boxes of making sure you got a training partner, making sure you're regular and consistent in your timing, making sure you're not biting too much more than you can chew, and of course, reinforcing that high motivation, letting yourself experience good results, being proud of yourself. After a while, it's going to get to habit, and oh my God, everything will get easier, right? You'll get better at it, right? And that's what they say. It's not that just that it gets easier, you get better, right? Training doesn't get easier, you get better, you get stronger, and you get more habituated, and then you unlock all your potential. So habit, here's a little sort of graphical representation. Your average motivation just goes up, right? And the amount of willpower you have to use goes down to the point where your average motivation level is actually above your line of intention. So like someone's like, are you motivated enough to train? If you're not habituated, you're like, oh, today, no. But if someone's like, are you motivated enough to train? And you are habituated, you're like, yeah, plenty enough. You know, it doesn't even feel like the level of motivation is that high. It's just that motivation that you have because it waxes and wanes actually less. You don't even feel as like, oh, I got the urge. But the adherence level is as high or higher with just not nearly as much effort, not nearly as much motivation. Just doesn't take you much to kick over the box and go and do what you have to do. Lastly, passion. It's last because it's actually the least important. People say passion is the most important. If you want to be an elite athlete, sure, but not everyone wants to be that. Passion is the love of the training process, like being in love with the training process. And this video is being recorded shortly after all the quarantine stuff has ended with COVID-19. How many of you guys feel that vibe? You know what I'm saying? You were in love with the gym. You may not even have known it, but 3 weeks after you can't go to the gym, you're like, I feel like I just broke up with my greatest boyfriend ever. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, it's a tough thing if you're passionate. Now, a lot of people, it's funny because those of us that are passionate about the gym, we're like, when are gyms opening? This is awful. The people that weren't passionate about the gym, you could tell because they're like, oh, I haven't fucking trained in months, and Netflix is cool though. You're like, what? You're not suffering? They're like, nah. And then when the gyms reopen, they're like, fuck, I guess I got to get into the gym. And terrible part about the whole COVID-19 thing, it kicked a ton of people out of their habits too. So some of those people have to re-inspire and go through this whole process again. And of course, getting back to habit is easier if you've done it before, but good God, but if you're passionate, here's the deal. You're going to run headfirst into the gym as soon as they open it. Passion is good for fueling your adherence to insane levels. And that either leads to an easy and super fun, healthy training for a long time, or unlocking your ability to train so hard and be so consistent and so durable that you unlock all of your genetic potential. Just habit alone won't get someone to see the body of their dreams as much as it could be. But if you're passionate about training, nothing's ever going to stop you. How the hell do you stop people that actively go out of their way to train? I've been on road trips. I go to foreign countries as an invited speaker at seminars, and the first thing I do is find a fucking gym somewhere, communicate sign language to people I have no idea how to speak to them, pay money, and get into the gym. How do you stop a motherfucker like that, right? Holy crap, passion is a really, really big deal. The thing is, it's not for everyone, right? And here's some of the things it's not good for. So it's not something you can get in just a few weeks. It takes months and it takes years, if ever. You can inspire people in minutes, but you can't make them passionate. This is where a lot of Instagram influencers get their terms wrong or even their process wrong. Sometimes they say, I want to inspire people to become fit. That's actually possible if you're an Instagrammer. Just your pictures alone can inspire people. But some people say like, my passion is getting people passionate about fitness. Holy fuck, that is a hell of a journey. That takes weeks and months and even longer of coaching and psychological work and reinforcing and good experiences, and maybe it doesn't catch on. So passion is not required. Habit is required to do great things. Passion is required to do incredible things and look out your full potential. It's not for everyone. A lot of people can train the rest of their lives with no passion at all, just really good habits. But passion is awesome to have, and there are ways to boost it. And if you can get someone to passion, especially yourself, that makes a world of difference, especially for those elite outcomes, letting all of your potential flow. How can we boost it? Well, you got to let the success of training get to your head. Okay, you don't hit a PR on your deadlift and walk off and be like, oh, I did it. Like, that's good. I'm building good habits. Right? The guy ended fine. You walk off and you just feel that flow. You're like, fucking God, I'm going to be fucking immortal. I'm going to keep getting stronger forever. And you let it flow through you and you drive home. You guys ever hit a big deadlift PR and you're driving home and you're just like, you want to pull that steering wheel off, break it apart, start to deatomize structures, fucking Dragon Ball Z character type shit. That leads to passion, right? And if you don't let yourself feel that kind of pride and that kind of sense of accomplishment, passion's probably not for you. Sometimes you have a choice of whether or not you want to feel your swag. Feel it out. Turn up your tunes. Yell a little bit. That stuff gets good. If you're not faking it, if you're really letting it flow and you're really proud of yourself, that helps build passion. Another one, train with friends and like-minded people. Like, if you let your flow go on the deadlift, you put the bar down after PR and you're like, right? If you have training partners or friends that are like, dude, what are you yelling for? Like, man, that's not even that much. You ain't shit. Or they make fun of you. Like, that's fucked up. You want to have training partners and friends with you at the gym that when you slam the deadlift bar down, they're like, yes. And you're like, you look at them and they're like, dude, you're the shit. That was awesome. Like, man, that just everything flows there and it elevates. And then everyone's super passionate. So you want a really good crew. That really helps. Another one is take training breaks when you need them, deloads, active rest, resensitization phases. So training is never like a terrible burden of suffering. Like, people will diet for shows and train for shows or train for powerlifting meets. And you're like, dude, how's your training? They're like, I fucking hate it. It's just a poorly managing fatigue. Of course, you're not going to be passionate about it because it sucks. But if you push, things get really rarefied, back off. Push, rarefied, back off. That entire process is generally good and you're getting better, really can lead to passion. Burning out is the fucking opposite of passion. You don't want to set yourself up to do that. Another one is having fun by doing some different stuff, exploring different machines, different training splits, different rep ranges, different modalities. Sometimes when you're really involved in some sport, you could enhance your passion by going into another sport. Like, you've been training with weights generally, getting big and strong for a while, maybe do a powerlifting meet, train more as a powerlifter. It really lights a fire under you. Then maybe do a bodybuilding show, train like a bodybuilder, join a CrossFit gym, do some CrossFit. All that kind of stuff is really great sometimes to really keep things fresh and enhance your passion for overall hard training and overall fitness. Really is a big deal. Now, some people, like myself, can key into one thing and their passion just explodes off of just doing that one thing more and more and more. And that's totally cool. So you don't have to liven it up, but sometimes even within that one thing, like if bodybuilding to me was just doing barbell squats, benches, and pulls, I'd be like, it would be a habit. I don't know if it would be a passion. But the different machines, different dip setups, different pull downs, different handles, changing things meso to meso, that stuff can really get you in a place where training is more fun all the time. And it's much easier to be passionate. Another one, really huge, helping others with their training plans. When you start coaching other people, I don't know why, but it reinvigorates the fuck out of your own training. And seeing other people succeed bounces back to you. So a lot of people that are passionate, they're not personal trainers because they're passionate. They're passionate because they're personal trainers. Like, they just started doing it because they were habitually training in fitness and it was a good job. They knew how to do it. And eventually they helped so many people that they started to become more and more passionate about their own training and about helping people. It's like a really positive feedback loop. So passion, cool little graphical representation here. It's that dark green squiggly line. It shows your waxes and wanes of motivation, because remember, they're just a critical feature of the whole process. But notice the waxes and wanes of motivation at the bottom parts of motivation at the right end of the graph, you're at a level of adherence that you were never at the very top levels of motivation before. That line of intention, if you string it out all the way, like there's no way you're not going to train. Someone's like, are you motivated enough to hit your workout? You're like, well, let's see, I'm passionate, which means I could do double this workout and still be motivated enough. That's a really, really great thing to have. Now, let's finish this out. The long term. Most people can train for a short time. Okay, people say New Year's resolutioners. They're great. They show up for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they're gone. You guys know what it's like in the gym, January 5th. You're like, how is it possible that 2 people can sit on a lat pull down machine at the same time? What the hell is going on, right? But after a few weeks, most of those people are gone. And it's like, you like come in and maybe you never talk to them, but there's that other Jack guy or Jack girl in the gym that you haven't talked to yet. And like you come in the first week of January, you look at them and they're like, and you're like, do that thing where you're like, good God, what are we doing here? And then 3 weeks later, you look at them again and they're like, and you're like, yep, it's just us again because everyone's gone. Everyone can train more or less for a short time, but making it more than a few weeks is tough. By knowing the 6 constructs of adherence, you as a friend or as a coach or as a mentor, as a personal trainer, can boost them as much as possible to get as many of those folks that come into the gym to last long enough to get to habit. When they get to habit, way more of them hang around. Not everyone will get to passion, but habit is good enough for most, like your general population clients. And if you've got somebody to habit, be positive, be involved, and if it's yourself that you're talking about, do all the right things, all the recommendations for passion, and maybe you'll get passionate too. But if you don't, no big deal. At least getting to habit using all of these constructs of adherence. Folks, give this some thought. If you have any questions, shoot them into the comments below. And if you like a question that someone else has asked, upvote it so we can see, and maybe we'll respond to some of the upvoted questions in future videos. Folks, during this video, hilariously, we had to take like 50 cuts because there's a dog barking, 2 separate dogs barking like crazy outside of our apartment. If you want a job being a dog hunter in Philadelphia, give me a call. 555-5555. Folks, thanks so much. See you later.